I'm Weyers. I'm here to talk about log impressioning. I'm a member of Hack42, which is a hackerspace, which is an awesome hackerspace in Arnhem, which is in the Netherlands. And I'm also the mastermind behind the Beehive 4.2. That's a foundation, basically, that's at the moment in the process of buying this piece of real estate to turn it into a hacker hub on a European scale. But I'm here to talk about logs today, as I'm a member of Tool, and Tool is the open organization of lock pickers. We pick locks as a sport, so for fun. And we normally do that without force and without keys. And in order to not get in trouble, because it sounds illegalish, James Bondy kind of stuff, we have to live by a tiny set of rules. Rule number 1, do not pick locks you do not own. Rule number 1. If the lock happens to be, or have explicit permission of the actual owner, that you're allowed to pick it. And another rule is, try to not pick locks that you rely on, because if you're going to practice on your front door, at some point you will fail, and then, you either can't close your door or you can't open it, so then you're in trouble. So if you stick to those 3 quite basic rules, you're probably okay. Okay, we're opening locks. This is a lock. It's a shitty picture of a lock, but that's a lock. And this is what we call a Euro profile. In some parts of the world they look different, but still the idea is the middle circle, if that one turns, we consider the lock open. I said we consider the lock open because that's a sport thing. Because if you're in an actual assignment and you have to open up a door, it doesn't really, the thing has to turn. But of course it has to turn a certain direction in order to open that door. In the sports world, we don't care. As long as it turns, we consider it open. Okay, so we have a round thing that we want to turn, and if we try to turn it now, that doesn't work. If we look at it in a schematic way, it looks a bit like this. So we have a round thing with a hole in it, and if you look into that hole, you see something, and it doesn't want to turn. Okay, so if we take an MRI, so take one layer off, one layer deeper, it looks like this. And then you see that the red bit that you saw sticking out there is not the bit that's preventing the circle from turning. That's the blue bit. Proof. Nothing's happening. Why? There you go. Boom. You see? It's not turning because of the blue bit. You see there's 2 bits of metal, and under it there's a spring. Otherwise gravity would take over and all hell will break loose. And so what you need to do in order to open this is put the whole stack down until the shear line between the blue and the red bit is at the shear line, basically. So that's a 1-pin lock, 1-pin stack lock. That's easy. They don't exist that much. So in the real world, we have a configuration like this. You have 5 or 6 or 7. I've seen 21. That's scary, but they do exist. But 5 is a normal number. Let's go with 5. So you have 5 pin stacks. So all those boundaries between the red and the blue bits have to align perfectly. Well, there's a special super secret tool for that. It's called a key. Like so. That's an open lock. It's not really sporty, but that's what it is. And if you have the wrong key, this one is 1 too deep. And we call this position 5. We start counting from the shoulder, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need that later. So this one is too deep, that one's too high, and it still doesn't work. So it has to be kind of exact. So the idea is, if you start turning a cylinder without a key in it, there are 5 bits preventing it from turning. That makes sense, right? Now, that's the idea. That's the way it should have been designed. Because in the real world, we have crap like this. If you look at the cylinder on your left, those holes are drilled, and the angles at the holes should have been straight 90-degree angles, which they're clearly not. On the other picture, those are pins, and they're supposed to be cylindrical. Well, they are-ish. But of course, there's tolerances. There's tons of tolerances. Well, these are actually totally crap, but that gets the idea. And also those holes, those are drilled in a factory. So there's a machine that keeps on drilling it. And of course, there's wear and tear on that machinery as well. And even so, if you want to take two objects and you want them to be exactly the same and make them from metal, you can't. They might look alike, but if you zoom in enough, there will be a difference. Maybe on the micron level, but so if you look at any two objects close enough, they will be different. And that tolerances we make use of. So instead of what they thought of, that once you start turning a lock, 5 bits are preventing it, there's 1 bit preventing it from turning first, because it's more misaligned than the rest, it's a thicker pin, or whatever. And that's quite interesting, because if we look at that one pin stack, we've seen this picture before. So if we just focus on that one pin stack, if we start turning it, nothing will happen, because that piece will be jammed to the side of the lock. But if we start pushing that pin down ever so slightly, now the lock turns ever so slightly until the next bit is preventing it from turning. And with some luck, the blue bit sticks on the ledge of the yellow bit. So if we look at a complete lock, that lock is 20% open. Okay, so what we can do, put a turning force on there. So position number 4 does not want to go down because that pin is squished to the side. So we find the one that doesn't want to go down and we push that one down until something goes click. And then it's rinse and repeat. You keep on searching for the one that doesn't want to go down. Okay. We're going to demo this. I use an American lock for that because I don't want my demos to fail. Tension. So a turning force, a feeler prick, in, doesn't want to go down, doesn't want to go down, and it's open. This is an unaltered lock that I bought in one of my first trips to America. And even the first time, it took me way longer to get it out of the shrink wrap than to actually pick it. But that's the way it is. I mean, in America, it's a consumer market. So in America there, you have basically, in a consumer market, so the non-business-like, you basically have 3 choices. That's, you either have a Yale, or a Quickset, or something very stupid expensive. And the very stupid expensive part, they have quite good locks. Some of the American locks are very, very good. And they're quite expensive. The Yales and the Quickset, not so much. They still ask quite a lot of money, but they're crap locks. So this, well, they do have guns and stuff like that, so maybe that helps. But yeah, we'll get more for that later. So that's single pin picking, so pin stack by pin stack, you find the ones. And you can cheat this a bit, because if you know that if you know it's a crap lock, then you can do other stuff as well. This is called a rake. You're fuzzing the process. So you're not actually going pin by pin, you just create noise and some pins will stick. And with some luck, that will be all the pins. And even if the lock is a bit better, then this might maybe not open your lock, but some pins will stick. So then you go in with another feeler to figure out what actually happened there. And then you maybe have to reset 1 or 2 pins and then you're done. Okay, we're going to try that. I have a jig-glove pick and it's open. Yes, that's quite fast. These things happen. Okay, what we need for something like that is a pick set. I mean, I know people who make their own. And, well, when I started off, quite a lot of people made their own because they were hard to actually get. You could only get them at hacker conferences, basically. But one problem is, if you make your own picks and you fail the picking process, you can go like, well, I have crappy picks. But then if you buy actual picks and you're still crap at it, you lost an excuse. So, yeah. So this is a quite good beginner's pick set. You can buy huge sets, but this is basically all you need to get started. Actually, a bit less than this could also happen. You need quite a lot of tensioners, because the turning force is actually one of the important parts of picking. Because if you put way too much tension on it, all the pins will be stuck and nothing will go down. So it's a balancing act, and it needs some practice. This works on normal locks, as I showed you, and also if the pins are aligned in a different way, same difference. I mean, it's still a pin stack with pins that are pushed out of the way until a certain depth. The top one has, well, it looks like quite a lot of pins, but actually this is a Wendeschlüssel, which means you can turn your key 180 degrees and still put it in. So only half of these holes make actually sense. But still, it's a Lips Scherzo actually. That happens to be a good one. But not every key that looks vaguely like that is supposed to be top-notch. The other one, you can actually see the pins, so you can just push them in like that. These are not always quite easy, but there are other ways to pick that as well. But as long as you can reach the pins in some way, shape, or form, you're good. Then there are other types of locks, and we find them quite a lot here. Those are wafer locks. I'm not talking about the computer room, because that shouldn't have it, but the cabinets within that computer room, those quite often have wafer locks. And these look vaguely like this. From the outside, they look quite the same, except you see plates instead of pins. And if we look at this schematically, it looks like this. Again, it's a turning thingy, and there's a hole, and there's a weird-shaped red thing. And if we take one layer off like we did before, you see that there's no springs, there's no blue bits, there's just a red bit. And your key goes through that pin. It's not a pin, but basically that's what it does. And that shouldn't be there. Okay, fail on my part. Well, I'll mime the visuals. What you see now that this pin thingy is too low because it can't turn. And if it's too high, it'll catch on the top. And if it's just in the middle, then it can turn. So that's the way this one works. You can use a normal pick for that, but you can also get jigglers. That's basically those are tiny mock-up keys. And because these kind of locks want to be opened. Open. Now, if I walk up to a server room cabinet, and I do that, you would assume I have the key, right? That's about done. So, having these types of locks on your cabinets, and especially if you're a colo, a shared computer room, I'm allowed in this box and I'm not allowed in that box. So for this box I have a key, for that one I don't. And I walk in like that, and some security guy sees me doing that on a camera, he will not be alarmed, will he? So please do change your locks to something decent. Other ways of opening. Mr. Newton. Okay, billiard balls. What happens if the white ball hits the red ball? Come on. Someone? Sorry? Bang. Bang. And after the bang, what happens? Sorry? Movement. Which is going to move how? No trick shots, no nothing. It's dead on. What will happen? Yes, and what will the blue ball do? Yeah, the blue one will move away. What will red do? Stay. Technically, and to scientifically prove that, we have an animation. See? And it moves, so now it's proved. So these colors are, of course, not chosen by random. So what if we could go into a lock and hit the red bits in a forceful way enough that the blue bits will shoot off and the reds will stay? Okay. there's a tool for that. So what we do, we go in with a piece of metal and whack all the pins at exactly the same time. If you time that correctly, so bang, now the lock was open. For that split second, you could turn the lock, because there was nothing preventing it from turning. Let's try this. We have the lock. We have a device that goes up and down. We put that in. It has to be aligned quite straight. Oops. Open. Okay. Of course, that took way too long. So we go with, haha. Same diff, in. Open. Okay. Now that's fun, right? Now, I travel quite a lot for these kind of conferences. This looks like a gun, especially on an X-ray. And this is just a vibrating hunk of metal that gets me other questions. So traveling with that is not the best idea in the world. So what if we can put a non-threatening piece of metal into a lock that can touch all the pins at the same time? Non-threatening piece of metal into a lock. A key, right? That'll work. So what if we take a key and file it down to the lowest possible depth? Well, in this configuration, the highest, so the deeper, so you put the cuts the deepest into a lock that's possible. So we call that the 9 cut, and this is called a 999 key. It should be a 99999 key, but, well, abbreviations. Then we take a bit of metal off the shoulder so it still moves. So now if you push the key in, it'll come out automatically because the springs try to align the pins at the center of the valleys we just created. That makes sense, right? So if we whack this with quite some force, and if you miss, it should hurt. Yes. Bang. That'll open. Okay. Let's try this. So we have a lock. Actually quite a good lock. And this key doesn't work, because it's not this one, because these are the correct keys. This one, if you fit it in, not working, unless you whack it. Of course it doesn't work. Open. It's fun, right? This is called a bump key. And of course, the key I use for this has to fit into your lock. And the alignments of the pins has to be exact, has to be the same as the ones we have. So if you go to a key duplication shop, a copy shop, you see a whole stack of keys hanging there. Tons of them. So you go like, for this attack to be effective, you have to have all the keys, right? That's actually not necessarily the case. Because if you ask the key duplicator what kind of keys you mostly sell, he'll probably point at 10 or 20 keys. In the Netherlands, he would point to these 10 or 20 keys. Well, now, because Tool made a white paper on this, and that got quite widely distributed and got quite some media attention. But before that, this would get you into 95% of all the normal households in the Netherlands. And as you saw, once you have these keys, there's hardly any skills involved. So we thought that was a problem, and the bad guys were already using it, so we decided to go into the open. And now most lock manufacturers have at least one bump-proof lock in their collection, so you can go for that. So that's a good thing. Okay, well, the talk is not called lockpicking, the talk is called impressioning. That's a different technique, but same means to the end. The question is, how long can I stand or be in front of your, let's say, server room door without getting questioned, arrested, shot, whatever? Is that 2 seconds? I'm pretty sure it can be 2 seconds at your server room door without getting shot or molested. Oops, sorry. Is that a minute? Can I be at your server room door for a minute without getting questioned? 10? I think if I can be 10 minutes at your server room door without getting questions, we have other problems, because that shouldn't be the case. But what if, because we kind of already established within 2 seconds I will not get arrested. But what if that 2 seconds happens every other day for about a week or something like that, or 2 weeks? Will that get me into trouble? Especially if I'm on the phone here, oh fuck, wrong door, and I walk off, and I do that every day. Okay, keep that in mind. This is Mr. Tickle. Well, it was Mr. Tickle, because he died. I do this presentation, I've been doing this presentation for quite a long time. And I used to have this slide in without that date. And my question was, if anybody knows this guy, please get me in contact with him, because I really like to pick his brain. Because Ed was working for the feds. And he was their NDA guy, which is non-destructive entry, so like lockpicking stuff. And the trick he could do, he was very good at, was impressioning. On the first assignment, he was a rookie, they put Ed in a cardboard box, like a refrigerator was delivered, and they delivered that box with Ed in it to the place they want to get into. That was a place that was owned by the mafia, because they wanted, this was a long, long time ago, 70s, because they wanted to have the keys to the front door of that mafia place, because they wanted to get in over and over again. So they delivered Ed overnight on a box, and there was a hole in the box, and through the hole he could reach the front door. And he was doing his stuff and filing and doing, and in the morning he had a working key. He probably needed new shorts for that, because I would be scared shitless, but that's what as a rookie, no matter. So yeah, well, he died, and a couple of years ago I got a message from his son stating that Ed died, and that son learned quite a lot from his dad, but not this technique. So he asked me to give a demonstration and teach him how to do that, which is what we did. That was cool. There's also a book about the subject. We'll get to it. It's written by Oliver Dietrichson. He won the German championships a couple of times with this stuff. And it has all sorts of nice pictures in it. So if you want to know more about the subject, I really can advise to get this book. It even has pictures by the Kriminaltechnisches Proeflabor, which is basically CSI in German. Okay, so what is this all about? Okay, we're going to make a key to the lock, because that's cool. Because if you start picking a lock, and it takes a bit, and halfway through you have to stop, everything resets. And of course, if you want to open that lock again, you again have to pick that lock. But if you can own the lock in a way that you end up with a key, of course you own that lock forever, because you can just walk in and out with the key. Okay, how are we going to do that? We start off with a blank key. So an uncut blank key. If we put that key into your lock, of course, well, initially all the blue bits were preventing it from turning, but now those are red bits, because there's a hunk of metal that's pushing all the keys up. Okay? If you put your key in, you can still wiggle your key a bit. That's normal. Because if you're totally drunk and come home at night, if it would be a very tight fit, it would be quite hard to get the key in. So there are tolerances, and there must be tolerances. So even if the key fits kind of snug, you can still move it a bit. That's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do, if we start turning this lock, same as with the lock picking, one of these pin stacks will be squished to the side, right? Because nothing changed. And what we can do, so that one on position 4 is squished to the side. If I move that key up and down, up and down, up and down, position 1, 3, and 5 will just be pushed down by a spring and gravity. And position 2 and 4, because, well, let's focus on 4 first. Position 4 doesn't want to go down, well, up, because it's squished to the side. So that pin will push harder into your key than the other ones. And of course, now I can turn the other way, and with some luck, another pin stack will not want to go down at that position. So with some luck, we get two positions where pins are pushed harder into your key than are the other ones. Okay, keys are made of brass-ish, or messing, or but they're not really stupid hard material. And well, and you can bring your own keys, so you take something that's not stupid hard. If you look at this key closely with magnification and proper lighting, you can see marks where that pin was forced into your key. And here you can see on number, you can see tiny dents. And in the real world, they look vaguely like this. And then what you do is at those positions that have marks, you take off a bit of material. Just a tiny bit, one depth. Okay, and then it's rinse and repeat. So you take this key again, put it in the lock, and do it again. So nothing changed that much, so probably that one will bind, so that one will mark, that one will bind, and so that one will mark. So we end up with marks in the valleys we just created. They look vaguely like this. So there's marks in the valley, so what we do, we take even more material off. Okay, rinse and repeat. So again, key in, start turning, but that position, that's done. So that position, on that position, the pin will not preventing it from turning. Actually, on that position, we have a correct key. So on position 2, it'll still mark, and with some luck on another position, because, well, we can move again, new marks will appear. So we keep on repeating this process over and over again, and until we turn up with a working key. This is the top one is the original one, the bottom one is the one I created, and it looks funny because I use a round file, but if you look at the important bits, so can't reach it, but the bottom of the valleys, those correspond with the actual key. And if you're any good at it, you win prizes, and now we're going to demo this. Ooh. Hold on a second. This has some potential of fail, so. Okay. Key. I put it in a grip because you need quite some force. I'll try to, let's see, does that work? Something works, we'll get to that. Okay, I'm going to cheat a bit. Actually, a blank key looks a bit like that. So the shiny bit is the surface. You see it's a bit of a lunar surface. So what I did, I put it in this tool, which makes scratches on it. Does that make sense? Those big... So those are the spots that the pins should be. Because a blank key is thicker, it has more give than the lowest possible cut. Does that make sense? So I'm going to trim it down a bit. This is the lock, haven't touched it yet. Just looking at, good work. Okay, lock, key, in, turn one side, up and down, up and down, up and down, turn other side, up and down, up and down, up and down. I'll do this a couple of times so we get nice fat marks, but that's the idea. Now, if we look at this key, in that valley, you see a scratch. You see that? If I go to the next one, not so much. So in position number 1, there is something, and I take this off. Also see something on position 3, so there we go. Key in lock again. I see something on 3. This is not that clear. You see, my time on the lock is quite limited. So that's the time I was talking about not getting arrested. Normally I use a workbench for this, so you can control the environment a bit more. Takes some getting used to. This is a sport, and there are competitions doing this. There's actually championships. The first round in these championships typically lasts an hour. And about half of the field opens in that time, so this could be quite a long talk. Ta-ta. Open. Ta-ta. So now, suppose you're on an assignment as a red team, and you want to be stealthy. So yes, 2 seconds every day. Once a day. I didn't count how many times I was on the lock, but I guess it was about 10 times. So during work days, that would be 2 weeks. They have a working key. So then the key guy can sort off and give this device, which is a key, to the techie who goes in and cleanse the box and do weird stuff with the firewall, because that's the working key. So he won't get questioned at all. How are we on time? We have a device. I didn't know that. Okay, so where were we? Yep. So what do you need for this? Well, not that much. Calipers do help, because you saw me taking off bits of material. Now, I do know what type and brand this lock is. I do not know the combination. Well, I do now. This is an Abos C84, and that's what the normal competitions in Europe are done on. And so we know what the depths are that you can take, and that considerably speeds up your time. But in the wild, if you don't know that, you just take off not too much. Just go tread lightly. But if you know the brand and type of the lock, you can go online and figure out what the possible depths are, and use calibers to figure out if your depths are correct, so if you can take full steps. And during competition, of course, you don't have time for that, but if you keep on training and figuring out if that's the correct depth, you create muscle memory, and at some point, you're good. The depths, like I said, can be found online, and they're also in the book I showed you, so that's a good thing. And of course, you saw me filing. A good file is an investment. We found out that there are a couple of good brands, but Grobet is one decent one. Swisscut number 4, it has the correct softness. Well, not softness. If you have a fine file and it's too fine, your surface that you file will become shiny. And if you put a light on that, that will basically blind you. And if you take a more coarse file, then you'll take away more material. But yeah, a Swiss cut number 4 seems to be the correct, the sweet spot. You need to mount your lock, of course. And well, I can't really travel with that because that would be all my luggage weight-wise. So I use Manfrotto super clamps that were an idea from a guy who does theater clamps. There are some here as well, and that works. Of course, you could take a key, you could take a door, I reckon, because that is basically what people mount locks in. But then customs will go like, "What are you doing?" This will work. You need a shitload of keys, because you will break keys if you're going to try this. You will break a ton of them. So make sure you can source them cheaply, because you'll burn through them quite a lot in practice. There are you see me using a quite cheap magnification aid with some lights. There are also custom boxes. The idea is brilliant. This is a box, and at the back side you have a couple of switches, and you can switch from infrared to yellow light to white light. And at the top there's a lens, so you can look and alter the light, which will give you different visuals on the key. And the idea is brilliant. And through this port that even turns, but it's built in a very crap way, so it doesn't really work. But yeah, the idea is good. So, and then it's portable, and you can use it as assignments. And there's not a ton of light. You can use it in the dark, and nobody will see what you're doing. You saw me using a grip. These are custom made by Jort Knaap for me. He's a tool maker. The one on the left is also a quite good one because it's light. Some guys who teach this say you can use a vice grip like the one on the right. I don't really agree, because what you get, because the vice grip is not aligned with your key. So the turning force will be like that. And if you use an actual grip that's in the same line as your key, it's just that. That will give you way less tension in muscle tension. And because if you do this seriously for a prolonged time, this will hurt at some point. We did have injuries just by training. And yeah, because it's a repeated process and you keep on doing that. I use another aid that I use is this. This is the same core as the lock, but I filed it down. And what you get then, if you stick a key in it, you can see exactly where the marks should appear, because in these holes normally would be pins. So hunting for the impressions gets way easier with a tool like that. And this is all allowed. This is all, I mean, you know upfront what's the type and what's the brand of the lock, so you can build this stuff. And that's quite low tech, and it works. I have this tool that's also made by Jort Knaap. This is the original key, Lunar Surface, and this is a Lunar Surface with bites out of it, and there I can prepare my my key. Because if you're hunting for marks on this lunar surface, that's going to be hard. But if I cut down the first depth, and if I cut it nicely, we have a smooth area that's just flat. So any mark on that surface will be quite easier to find. And you can travel light. We have quite tiny lights with a tiny microscope and a hand file. That should be enough to, and a grip. And then you're basically done. And so am I. Any questions? Do we see questions? We have hands.
How many different techniques do you have in your arsenal? Like you showed bump key, you showed us lock impressioning, you showed some simple things.
The question is, how many techniques do I have in my arsenal?
For instance, I lock my key, car key in my car, and I call somebody who can unlock it without breaking the glass
Okay.
or something. And open.
Okay.
And I say, how the hell did that happen? And he says, I can't tell you. And I'm wondering, how many different techniques do you have in your arsenal?
Okay, the question of this gentleman on the fourth row is how many different techniques do I have in my arsenal? And one of the anecdote he told me that if he lost his keys into a car, he calls some guy and he opens it without showing how he actually does it. Well, first of all, that guy opening your car is probably not picking your lock. He's going around your lock and he's opening it in another way. So he is attacking the closing mechanism, not so much the lock. He probably goes in via some way or jimmying it out. That is something, well, I do train because that's fun, but it's not related to the sports aspect. So that could be shimming or backdooring, or comparable to how you attack a computer. Because there are other techniques. I mean, if you can't break the crypto, then go to another attack. The question, how many techniques you have, this is basically the basic technique. So a lot of other attacks, or attacks that look different, are basically a combination of these, or a rework of these. So if it's purely mechanical, this is basically all you need. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Like I said, this is quite comparable to the computer world. Because normally, normal people, if you have a door and they say, well, we need this secured, okay, smack a lock on that, done, secure. Same goes with computers. We have a computer system, has to be secured. Firewall, done. Well, not so much. Because the first rule in your firewall rule set could be any, right? So, same with the lock. I mean, if you have a shit lock, you might as well don't have a lock. Because that lock is not protecting you, which is even worse than not having a lock. Because if you have a shitty firewall, you have a firewall, so you think you're safe. And if you don't have a firewall, at least you know that you don't have a firewall. So, any more questions? Okay, I'll wrap up here. I'll be at the speaker area for about 10 minutes, and then if there's more questions, I'll take them there.
Which lock do you have on your door?
No, the question is, which lock do I have on my front door? Normally, that would be a question you shouldn't answer, because but my lock is that stupid good. I have a Assa Abloy Protec on my door.
What was that?
Assa Abloy Protec.
Assa Abloy Protec.
Yes, Protec. Assa Abloy is the brand, Protec is the type. That's, yeah, I'm not...
And you rely solely on that one lock?
I can't really go into detail on that one, but yeah, because I get friends over, and a lot of my friends do lockpick. So if I have something like this on my door, then they won't visit me again because they laugh at me. And with the Protec, you're good. Yeah, you're good. One more question.
How many times you need to open your door without the key? How many times?
If I lose my key at my front door, I have to call somebody with a drill.
Or with a brick?
Oh, with a brick, yeah, but if we want to go through the lock, then a drill comes out. Yeah, because that's... I know 3 guys that claim to have picked that lock, and I know for a fact that 2 of those are bullshitting, and the number 3 can do it in his lab under controlled circumstances with a cutaway, and he says he's not cheating. And I kind of believe him, but... So, yeah, my risk profile seems to be good at this point. There's one more question. My time is also almost up, so I'll take that one, and then we'll leave to the... Yes. I don't totally understand the question, but I believe... Okay, got it. There are some keys with moving parts, the gentleman explained. And yes, there are. There are some parts that has to move through your key. A lot of these are mostly patent protection. So they are made in a way that you can't produce those keys because they're patented. Some of these mechanisms kind of make sense for a duplication part, because if you make copies, so if you want to impression that, you're out, because I mean you need a key with that moving part, otherwise you can't impression that. But picking, most of the locks with moving parts, if I pick them, I don't know, I just open them, because it's just a pin that has to be touched, and that still works. I'll wrap up here. If there's any more questions, please come to the speaker area. Thank you.